In this video, we're going to look at how we add jQuery to our web page when we want to use it. So let's go to the jQuery website and we'll look. First of all, we're going to go to the downloads page. So let's click on downloads and it shows us some different ways to do it. So jQuery, we can download the compressed production jQuery or the uncompressed development query. Now, uncompressed development query would be what we want if we're going to alter jQuery in any way. That's a little bit beyond the scope of what we're going to do. We're not going to modify jQuery on our websites, but I am going to show it to you. Normally, we're going to get the compressed version, and I will show you the difference between those two. And there's a bunch of other ways down here that we can do it. Using jQuery with a content delivery network. We'll talk about that in a couple minutes. But let's look at the difference between these versions first. So I am going to click the download the uncompressed development jQuery 3.6.4. And this is jQuery. This is the code you get when you download jQuery's JavaScript library. This is version 3.6.4. And if you go down through here, this is nothing but a giant library of functions that are built into jQuery. And I can scroll for a long time. And these are all pre-written functions that we can use. So there's jQuery.extend, array-like, there's sizzle, and I click, you can just see this code, pages after pages after pages of pre-written JavaScript code for us. Okay, we don't need to understand how all these things work. All we need to know is what the methods are that we need to use, and we need to call them when we want to use them, and we don't have to worry about how they're implemented inside. Now, this is a pretty big library, but it is text. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's smaller than a lot of pictures you're probably downloading on the internet. But it is a pretty big file. And anytime somebody wants to include jQuery on the page, they have to put a link to this, which means it has to be downloaded onto the user's browser. So what they've done is they have a compressed version. So this was the uncompressed that we looked at. Here is the compressed version of jQuery 3.6.4. And if I download it, we can look at the file name. It's jQuery-3.6.4.min. It's the minified version. This is the exact same content that we just saw. But they've taken out all the white space. It's completely unreadable, but it makes it much, much, much smaller, so it downloads faster. So you can see I can scroll from top to bottom pretty easily compared to that last screen that I was scrolling for a long time. It is the exact same thing as this uncompressed version, just with all the white space, no extra space in. It's not readable by a human, not really, but it is smaller and makes it easier to download. So if you don't have a reason to be in here looking at the jQuery code, it is much better on your production site to use the compressed version because it will download faster for the users. Now, how do I get it? I can right click and say save link as, and I can save my copy of jQuery.3.6.4.min.js onto my computer. So let's go look at how we would actually get it on our page once we have it downloaded. It's not what I want to do. Here we go. So that was the download page we just came from. To include it on our page, if we have downloaded the minified version and we stick it in the same directory with our web page, we can do something like this. We just add a script tag just like we do for any other JavaScript. The proper place for that is at the bottom of our page because we want our page to load and be visually available to the user before it starts downloading the JavaScript. So in here, we're specifying our source, and it's the jQuery 3.4.1.min file that we just looked at. And that works fine as long as we put it on our web server in the same folder as our HTML page. Now, that's not necessarily the best way, because we can also do this. Same script tag, except this time we're specifying the source as being https code.jquery.com. Okay, so it's going to go out to jQuery.com. They have a code repository out there, and our page can load it from jQuery.com. Now, what's the advantage to that? Well, one of the advantages is sometimes we're paying by bandwidth for the amount of code that's being sent off of our server. If we have our server hosted somewhere that's charging us, we could pay more if we use more bandwidth. So by having our end users downloading it from jQuery.com instead of our web server, we're saving that little bit of bandwidth, and it can add up with you, especially if you have millions of users. The other benefit is if the user has already been to code.jquery.com, which is highly likely because so many sites use jQuery, they may already have this file cached on their computer. And as long as we're getting it from the same place, they won't need to download it again. And it will work even faster. So jQuery.com, nice fast download. We don't pay for the bandwidth. And there's a good chance the user might already have a cached version of that file. They're probably not going to have a cached version of ours unless we have a gigantic site that people are using a million times a day. So the other benefit here is we don't have to download it into our website. We're just going to pull it directly from theirs. There are also slim versions. So how to include the slim version of jQuery 3.4.1. The slim version means not only is it minified, they've taken out some of the key features, probably features that, at least in this chapter, you're probably not going to use, and maybe not even in this course, you won't use those features. However, I can't remember exactly which ones they take out. If you go to their website, they'll tell you which ones they take out. Well, let's go look. CDN. I'm not seeing the slim version. Give me a second and I will find it. All right, so there's the answer. You can also use the slim build, which excludes Ajax and effects. So if you're not using special effects modules, and if you're not using Ajax, which we will be doing some Ajax in JavaScript later on. I'm not sure if we're using jQuery for it or not. But if you're not using those, you can use the slimmer build that's even smaller files. But I would say at this point, we're not too worried about bandwidth or anything at this point. So I would just use the regular minified jQuery version. Okay. And one more thing you can add is SRI checking. Basically, SRI checking makes sure that when people are downloading from a third-party site on your web page, you want to make sure that they're not vulnerable to hackers. What a hacker could do if they wanted to hack is somehow substitute a corrupted version of jQuery and pass that off to the user, maybe using a man-in-the-middle attack or something like that. Pass a different version of jQuery off to the user that's actually going to send information to some third-party server, and they're going to hack your credentials, or who knows what all they could do. But this prevents that. So you can use SRI checking. So here's an example, and you would get this right off of their website. They would give you this code. If you go look around, you can find this. So jQuery.com, jQuery-3.4.1 min.js, and then integrity equals, and they have a big encryption code here that makes sure when the file's downloaded, it will get hashed with that same code, and we can tell. You can tell instantly if it's been tampered with. If it doesn't match this, it won't work. So it makes sure that it matches this key so that we can pull it from a third-party site and know that reliably it came from that actual third-party site and not from some hacker in the middle. All right, so that's another way you can do it. Probably the best way on a production site. For class, for what we're doing right here, this method right here is probably the one you want to use. Put the script in, code.jquery.com, or if you want to, you can download jQuery and just put it straight on your computer, straight into the folder of the project you're using if I don't already have it in the repo to start with. All right, that's enough about how to get jQuery on our website. In the next section, we'll start talking about selecting elements using jQuery.